Happy Love Month, everyone, but more specifically today, Happy Valentine's Day. So this video has been delayed because I initially planned to have this uploaded before Valentine's Day so that all of you can create your own blush emotes for the day. Unfortunately, February started for me getting sick that lasted almost 1 to 2 weeks, which is why this video is just coming out now. I drew the illustrations in Procreate and I'm animating them on Procreate Dreams.
Before we dive in, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Your support means the world and helps this channel grow. Now, let's get started.
Okay, so as usual, we start off on Procreate where I show you guys the multiple layers that I import towards Procreate Dreams before I animate them. For the blush emote, I separated them into 6 layers only, and I'm currently arranging them here now. A few refresher, this icon is for grouping, multiple layers, or even a single layer. I sometimes put a single layer in a group folder just so that I can apply the transform keyframe there in case I need to edit the illustration and I won't have to redo the keyframing because it's applied on the group folder instead of that specific layer. Another tool that you can use is the highlight feature wherein you can color code groups or individual layers. You can organize them and easily keep track of them even when you're zooming in and out. When it comes to animated emotes, the group that I always consistently have is the face group. This allows me for flexibility when it comes to face angles. It already gives me a certain amount of control when it comes to adding more dynamic movement to the head when it's moving. After grouping, I now arrange the anchor points. I apply this on both individual layers as well as the group folder. This part is where I show what the anchor point does. Now it's time to keyframe and I'm starting off with the full group layer. My plan here is to have her sway side to side a little bit so that while she's blushing, there's a little giddiness to it. I'm applying a rotation keyframe in order to do that. I also increased the keyframe from 3 to 5 so that I can apply more movement to make it go fast. I'm good with that for now and I'm going to the hands. For this one, I am just using warp, which by the way, warp and distort keyframes don't apply to groups. So you're gonna apply this directly to a drawing layer. For the hand animation, I'm just having it pressed on the cheeks out of extreme shyness. As you can see here, warp keyframing is really convenient so that you don't have to separate all elements. Because if I did this using a transform keyframe, then technically I would have to separate both left and right hand so that I can generate this kind of movement. But with warp, its ability to, warp, specifically keyframes, there's more flexibility with it. What I'm doing here now is finalizing the timing of the hand movement since it's the most prominent in the animation, so it's a good starting point for me to follow with the rest of the other layers or elements. Another tip, you should find which action is actually the most important out of everything else so that the rest of the elements that come with the animation can just react to that specific action. It just makes the process a bit faster because what usually happens is that if you don't have that figured out, everything else might clash with one another. I went back to the group keyframing just so that I can apply the changes that I need before proceeding to the rest of the layers. Back to adjusting the timing of the keyframes in the hands before I proceed with the rest of the elements. Now I'll be warping the head. For this particular one, I decided not to separate the head from the bangs and just decided to use warp with it. So you'll see here how powerful warp is when it comes to just lessening the layers that you have to create in order to make this kind of movement happen. As a way to react to the side-by-side wiggle movement of the body, I'm gonna have to move the side bangs as well as the bangs according to the direction of the wiggle. By the way, huge reminder, as this emote is a loop animation, you have to remember that the first and last keyframe should be the same. Now we're going to the small body behind. I'm also using warp on this one, but it's just gonna be a simple up and down stretch just so that it has movement. Here you'll see that I'm just aligning the keyframes according to the ones that I've already done so that its timing is the same, as well as me duplicating and making sure that it's looped. Here I'm just making some in-between keyframe adjustments, and what I mean by that is that you'll see here that some of it can be seen cut off. So with warp, it's easy for me to stretch it out all the way to the crop area so that I don't exactly need to redraw anything. And finally, the last part that I'm warping is the back part of the hair. Now that all body layers are animated, the only thing I really need to do on this part is to have the movement follow the rest of it. Just like on the hands, there are some parts here that show that it's being cut off, and with warp, I just close that part up. Just like with the front bangs, what I'm doing here is adding in between keyframes to add more wiggle movement. Now that I'm done with the body, we're finally going to the face. I'm starting off with a transformation keyframe on the group layer. As you can't keyframe warp on a group layer, this is one of the reasons why I sometimes combine elements together. So for this one, I combined the eyebrows with the eyes. I'm applying warp on both eyebrow layer and the mouth. For the eye warp, what I did here is just create this effect of like the face going in, like being little out of shyness and then eventually expanding after being giddy for a while. Now I'm going to apply the same principle with the mouth. For a cuter expression, I'm going with a face that's getting scrunched up, like everything's like squeezing in out of shyness and then eventually just being happy and expanding. Now we're going back to the group transform keyframe. The reason why I created this is for this specific effect, which is to just bring the face up and down. And of course, with this additional movement, I'm gonna have to make a few adjustments with the other elements of the body, specifically the head and the back part of the hair. Now I'm just using in-between keyframes in order to fix the parts that end up overlapping during the animation, specifically the eyes going over the bangs. This is actually one of the reasons why I usually separate the hair from the face layer, but for this particular one, it's still possible for you to do it this way. And now for the layer that I did not include, I decided to draw here in Procreate Dreams instead, the blush. So for this one, I only really need a soft brush just to add that blush effect. So for this one, I'm actually also applying a blending mode to the layer, which is multiply. For the animation, I'm going to be applying a opacity and a scale keyframe for this one so that when the blush fades in and she gets the most giddy, the blush is gonna expand fully on the face. As you can see, I also adjusted the timing of the fading in so that it's faster. And finally, if you want to adjust the color of the blush, you just have to add a hue saturation keyframe and make the adjustments from there. Now it's done and time to export, hiding the background through this method, and then exporting the frame PNGs to import on Procreate and exporting there as a GIF. I hope this video helps you in animating your own blush emote on the iPad using Procreate Dreams. And speaking of animation on the iPad, I'm gonna be re-exploring an animation app that I bought in 2022 because they recently released their big 2.0 update and it's filled with amazing mind-blowing tools and features. So I'm really excited to explore another animation app that we can play around with and create future animations with. The only thing left for me to say is Happy Valentine's Day, and remember that on this love month, reflect on how much you love creating and making art. And from there, moving forward, you'll know what to do. Which is why I'll say, let's all go out there and make some art.